Hi, this is Chris Smith with Local Joe's. At Local Joe's, we help local business. Hi, this is Chris Smith with Local Joe's.
This is City Pulse Newsmakers, a weekly look at the issues and the people behind them in Greater Lansing. Brought to you by City Pulse, Lansing's weekly alternative newspaper. And now, here's your host, City Pulse publisher, Burl Schwartz.
Good morning. Is the City of Lansing bearing too much of the burden for public and affordable housing in our community? And if so, what does that mean for the School for the Blind project? Here to discuss that topic are Julie Powers, who is the Executive Director of the Greater Lansing Housing Coalition, and First Ward City Councilwoman Jody Washington, and Todd Haywood, who covers housing issues for City Pulse. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
And before we get into the topic, Jody, congratulations on being elected to a second term.
Thank you so much, Burl, and thank you for your support during my election. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Julie, let's start with you, if we may. Could you give us kind of an overview of first of all, what is the definition of affordable housing, and how much of it is there in the city of Lansing and perhaps beyond?
Well, you know, if we had a few hours, I could give you a full definition of affordable housing. But what I can tell you is that it's federally defined, state defined, and locally defined. The feds define it as housing for folks at or below 80% of area median income, which in this area for one person means about $3,000 a month. That's the easiest way I can explain it to you. Now, but affordable housing is a really broad umbrella, and it talks about everything from supportive housing, ending chronic homelessness, housing for folks with disabilities, housing for folks with mental health issues, housing for our seniors. It's really a big umbrella. So a lot of times everything gets lumped under affordable housing, and we're not always talking about the same thing. So I like to be real clear when we're talking about what kind of housing are we talking about, rather than this bigger, broader umbrella of affordable housing. Now, I think what the gist of this conversation is, does Lansing is Lansing carrying too much of the burden, if you will, of taxpayer-supported housing? I think is a better way to put that. Those are properties that have low-income housing tax credit deals on them, which are state tax credits, and they also may have local home dollars, which are CDBG dollars that come from the federal government, and may or may not have payment in lieu of taxes to a municipality, a pilot. So, you know, there are a lot of different iterations you can have. There's also, layering on top of this to make it even more complicated, is there are housing choice vouchers, which are issued by the state for the federal government, which are given to individuals who have certain economic or physical needs and can't make their own housing payments. So they make a portion of the payment for them. We also, we use that for folks who are very low income with disabilities, seniors, veterans, the like. But those are all mandated at the state and federal level. Lansing doesn't have much to say about that. And those vouchers can be used at private properties. So we have a lot of folks who have Section 8 vouchers who live in Lansing. But that we don't have any control over that. That's the private market and the state. That's a relationship that we're not really involved in. What the city of Lansing gets involved in, and any other municipality, is whether or not the municipality was willing to allow the development of properties or housing communities that are income qualified and may include a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes, or other considerations through the zoning and planning process.
I am impressed how much knowledge you have after, how long have you been on this job?
Well, I've been on this job 15 months, but I've been doing this work for 20 years.
Okay, so
not my first rodeo.
So now the next big affordable housing project is the School for the Blind plan, right?
It is one of the housing development deals in the region that are in the proposal process. Okay. And these projects take years of planning, years and years and years. And for those of us who've been around for a few cycles with the School for the Blind, I don't know if this is the fourth or the fifth swing to get tax credits through the state, but it's certainly more than the third.
Okay.
So redeveloping sites is a little bit different from building from the ground up. If you've got a piece of earth, of land, of property, you don't have to deal with a complicated site like the former Michigan School for the Blind.
All right, so now, and I know you were there for the announcement, you support the project. You may have some reservations about some specifics, but in general, you do support it, right?
Well, what Greater Lansing Housing Coalition supports is appropriate housing in our community. And we selfishly, I'm totally selfish, our building is on that ground, on the property, and we're currently keeping those buildings boarded up through a relationship with the owners. And it is a magnet for crime, drugs. It's bringing down the quality of the neighborhood. It's making it unsafe for our residents and our neighbors. And we have 3 Head Start classrooms in our building. And I have the care and custody of 3 and 4-year-olds every day, and I don't want them looking at that nonsense.
All right, so Jody, you've got some concerns though about whether the city of Lansing has too much of the burden.
Correct.
What are you concerned about?
First and foremost, I think there's a real misperception out there that, in fact, I've heard it, Jody Washington hates poor people. That couldn't be further from the truth. Jody Washington doesn't want good housing for people. For God's sakes, I raised my children in affordable housing. I really don't want to hear it. And third, that I am totally against this project, which is also not true. What I am against is the pilot.
Okay, and what is the pilot? Tell us again.
Can I go forward?
Rock on.
The pilot is the payment in lieu of taxes. And what that is the developer will come in, the owner of this property, they take all of the rents from that property, which are going to be low to moderate, okay? So then out of that, they back out all the utilities. So if they're paying for the utilities for the folks, they back all that out. They back out the management fees. They back out the assessment fees. They back out all their expenses. Then we, which is the typical percentage, is 4%. 4% of
Who's
not
we?
much.
What do you mean we?
The city.
City
will,
puts in 4%.
No, we will get
The city gets
4% from this development.
Gotcha.
Which, when I sat down with this developer, the quote they gave me was $11,000 a year. Well, shoot, that's not even going to pay for the services we have to provide out there. And Julie, some of my concerns is they were all excited to put a police substation in there, and I said, so you're anticipating problems. I'm not against developing that
You
site.
just think the city should get more?
More money.
Okay.
If you want to do the project, pay us the property tax. Why should we? And we're not going to get any income tax from that property because we're talking about lower income people, which is fine, but they're not going to be paying income tax, and they're not going to be shopping at Bradley's Home Improvement Store or buying their art in Old Town or going to Grace's. I mean, some of this utopian stuff is ridiculous, but I'm not against the project. I'm against us not getting our money for the property.
All right, Todd?
So I think one of the important questions is, do we have enough affordable housing for low to moderate income
Yes.
individuals in the city, one, and two, in the region? Do we have it? And I'll toss it to both of you to answer that.
Sure. You want to go first?
I will. We have 2 housing committees on going through the city right now. The mayor has one, we have one, and what I asked for specifically was, how many low to moderate income housing units do we have in the city? What are we getting for it? How many of them are pilots? And I've yet to get that number, so I started doing my own research, and I will continue it when I get back because I want these numbers as we go forward. I am at, right now, within the city limits, at 125 multifamily dwellings within this city that qualify for low to moderate, because moderate will go up to $800 a month. Most of our housing stock in Lansing is low income to moderate housing. What we are sorely lacking in is market rate and absolutely high end. You know, this is my complaint. We need balance. We need to be we have, as far as I'm aware of right now, we have over 50 pilots hanging out there in our city already. I don't know. I'm so concerned. We need to raise revenue in this city, and as we continue to give away the land at no value, the land, once it's gone forever. We have 34.4 square miles in this city. We don't have a whole lot more land to give. And if we continue to give pilots and not get income tax and not, we're going to be in dire needs. We're already seeing it. $650 million in legacy costs. We can't fix our roads. We can't provide services. The revenue sharing is being cut from the state. It's going to continue to be cut as we fund Detroit and Flint and these other places. My thing is, I don't mind affordable housing. I want a regional discussion. I want fair share housing. I want some of these projects to be in Okemos and Holt and not just one. You know, I don't want everything in Lansing. We cannot be the hub for poverty, low-income housing. We don't get anything for state property, government buildings, churches, schools, universities, colleges, Sparrow. We don't get anything for any of these properties. However, excuse me, some of them, like Sparrow and colleges, we're getting a high income tax. We're getting something. GM, we're getting all kinds of income tax. We're also getting, you know, offshoot businesses. I think it's time to weigh what are we actually going to get as a city for these projects that we're putting out there, because we can no longer afford to give away the farm. This is my concern.
So, yes or no? Is there enough affordable, low, moderate income housing in Lansing?
More than enough, in my opinion.
Is there enough in the region?
No.
Okay, so we did an actual study. Michigan State University did it. Took 3 years. This is part of a regional planning process because housing is regional. What happens in Lansing affects Charlotte, St. John's, you name it, it affects everybody. So we took 3 years and looked at the data. We looked at historical census data. We did windshield surveys, which is where you actually drive around and look through your windshield. We assessed the quality and condition. We went through all of the tax rolls for all 3 counties. We looked at the average age of properties, and we put it all together and put some projections out there based on best guess modeling. And again, this was from Michigan State University that GLHC oversaw this study. What we know is that we are short about 20,000 units of affordable, appropriate housing, specifically for seniors. And that's in the next
20,000.
20,000. Now here's why. Most of our housing in mid-Michigan, in the Tri-County area, Lansing, the average housing age is a little higher. We're at like 72, 73 years average housing age. Our housing stock's old. And we're similar to the Rust Belt cities. It's not like this is some, magical thing that popped up. But we also have, an aging population. Our boomers are getting older. Then they're living in these big old houses. And I live in one too. I actually have one of the few small ones. But I like old, by the way, just so we're clear, I like old houses. So, but most of our seniors are living in houses that are unsustainable. They need housing now as they're aging and looking to the next 10 years. They need houses that are, or homes that are on one floor, or they have an elevator building. They need moderate modifications made. No more tubs, walk-in showers, roll-in showers should it ever become necessary. Our seniors need appropriate housing. So I keep talking about we need appropriate housing, not necessarily affordable housing, because what's appropriate in this case is we need housing units that would work for our senior community.
We agree on that.
Yeah, we totally agree on this. But what I can also tell you is Lansing is our hub. This is our capital city. This is where the jobs are. This is where the opportunities are. 20% of people who working in the insurance field work in Lansing. I just saw that actually in something you wrote, Dot, I think. We are the hub for a number of industries, and all the jobs are here. The academic opportunities, the opportunities to pull yourself up are here. All of the services that our seniors and our low to moderate income families need are here. So of course they're attracted here. We have public transit here. And as much as I would love to continue to put affordable and appropriate housing in some of our more rural communities, because let me tell you, they are super welcoming, they don't have public transit. They don't have the healthcare system like we do here. We're pretty amazing when it comes right down to it. If you look at the connectivity and the option, you can't get through a neighborhood that doesn't have a high walk score in Lansing, in most of Lansing, in the core, especially in the first ward. We're super walkable, bikeable, visitable, but we do have old houses. And Jody, we live on the east side, so but I can tell you that we need appropriate housing. Now, we do have a lot of housing that is cash money affordable in Lansing, but what we also know is that much of that housing stock is absolutely in appalling condition. And I'll tell you appalling because we're doing a pilot project right now with the health department. We've got 50 families that we're working with. Every single one of those houses is a rental house. They're paying very little rent, $500, $600, $700 a month for rent, which is clearly affordable. All those kids have elevated lead levels, every one of them. And that's why we're in those houses. We know that through our code compliance officers that we have a lot of unregistered rentals. We have a huge issue with terrible, terrible land contracts that there's a task force trying to address that. But we have a real issue with the quality of housing. So I keep focusing on, sure, it's cheap, but do you want to live there? No. And so what we need is appropriate housing. We need good quality housing. We need safe, decent housing, and we don't have it. And especially for our seniors, for folks with mobility challenges, they don't have options right now. So the development that's being proposed at the School for the Blind, because it will have elevators, it will be using universal design elements, it will be or environmentally responsible, which they have to do because otherwise I'd be mad, because I'm me. But this is a great opportunity for a couple hundred people who live in that neighborhood to maybe move out of their big old houses and move into a smaller home, and maybe younger families will want to move in and renovate those houses. The City of Lansing just announced an amazing update to their home rehab program, $40,000, practically free money, forgivable over 30 years, $10,000 grant. I mean, it's an incredible deal. For $40,000, a younger family or individuals could update those houses, but for our seniors, it's just not feasible. I have been to every single house in our neighborhood because we live there and we go and
What's your neighborhood?
Sorry, School for the Blind. That's where our office is.
Oh, in the school.
Yeah, School for the Blind. Try again.
Right.
In the Walnut Pine area. And I looked as far back. The City of Lansing put out a plan in 1992 that was after the announcement of the closing of the School for the Blind, which came out in '89. And there were precursors to that, but the warning bells were sounded in '89, and they started closing down operations thereafter. But in 1992, the city put together a really beautiful plan for the future of that site. And do you know what they proposed putting there? Redeveloping the two big buildings into senior housing and then building family housing on the site. As far back as 1992, the neighbors, our elected officials, and the administration had the vision that that site could continue, because for all those years, since the early 1900s, that site has been the home to children, to families. It was a boarding school for kids with visual impairments. So the vision was to continue to have that livelihood, that life. And so our neighbors have told us repeatedly that they want to see something happen on that site.
Jody, do you have any
Thank
problem
you.
with any of that? Your problem is the City of Lansing's not getting enough money out of it.
Thank
I
you.
don't disagree.
This is my point. No, I agree. We don't have affordable or appropriate senior housing. Here's my issue. We keep talking about all these deplorable properties. We aren't taking care of what we have. So if history repeats itself, I will look at this property in 10 years. That's when we're going to see what actually happened on that property, and I hope to God it's wonderful. I'm concerned that the current owners aren't taking care of it, and they're letting crime and drug addicts and everything else, because if they're not taking care of it now, they're not going to take care of it later. I have an issue with that. I have an issue with the fact that we have high-rise senior housing, and your property on South Washington is one of them. They didn't have enough
That's the
Tower of
Lansing
Terror.
Housing Commission.
Right.
Not us.
No, I'm not talking about any one
Right.
group's property. But what I'm saying is they didn't have enough seniors for that development, so they started letting in all ages. Now we have what we have. I have issues at Friendship. I have issues at Riverfront. We have issues here and there. My point is this: do we keep up? And I am not against this project. I'm against the pilot. That's where my angst is.
And what are your thoughts on the pilot?
Well, I would say this, and I think Jody and I actually had a good talk just kind of offline the other day, is pilots are one of the many tools that a city has to support the priorities that the city has. So the City of Lansing has a comprehensive plan for housing. Who knew, right? Mm-hmm. They've also adopted our fair and affordable housing plan as a priority, and sort of affirmed that yes, we need appropriate senior housing, accessible housing, that we need some energy efficiency work and all this other stuff. But that comprehensive plan prioritizes certain things, one of which is ending chronic homelessness. Another is housing for adults with mental illness, severe mental illness, because when we deinstitutionalize folks kind of on the streets, and this is part of the chronic homeless issue, pilots can be used for things like permanent supportive housing, which help folks who are really, really in need. And so we have several pilots. For my organization, we have Walnut Street apartments with folks with chronically homeless with severe mental illness in a case management setting. They have supervision. We also have a property on Pennsylvania, our Ballantyne property, which is targeted for chronically homeless individuals, primarily with families. It tends to be single female heads of household. But those pilots that the city we worked in partnership to address a very specific issue, in this case, chronic homelessness in certain populations.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt here because Julie, I love her to death, but she could go on forever. And she will not stop. That's my point. We have pilot after pilot. We have over 50. What I'm putting out here is this. We also have so many properties that don't pay taxes, churches, buildings by churches that do church activity, all of our government buildings, all of our universities, all of our colleges, all of our school district, we have so much property in this city that is not paying
let me
anything.
ask you a question, Jody.
20
You voted for Riverview Church to go into a prime piece of real estate
Thank
in
you.
Rio Town when there are plenty of empty churches they could have gone into.
And you know what? I don't know that I would vote that way today, Burl. I am really going to say that I am not sure I would vote that way today.
Okay.
Because the more I'm getting into our budget and the more I'm seeing our challenges in this budget and the more I'm not seeing people giving back to those neighborhoods, there was a very clear understanding that they would be giving back to that neighborhood in a very significant way, and they're not. And this is what I'm saying about the abatements we give. We gave it to brownfields, to Skyview, and we're promised all these things. They don't happen. We need a reporting system. It's not just pilots I'm against. I want all of our abatements looked at. I want full reporting back on these abatements and these promises. We've got to start bringing income. I think it's great that these pilots and low income and everybody can ride buses, but we have to start drawing in another population, or we're not going to be able to sustain this city.
So
we have no high
I'm gonna
end.
interrupt
We
you
have
here.
no.
You're very supportive of the 2000 block program.
I am.
Are you going to vote against the property abatements there and the
Those
brownfields
abatements
there?
have already gone through, but let me tell you one thing that this property doesn't have. There will be retail on the bottom. They will be getting business money in there. They will be providing a few jobs. The income level of the people moving in there is going to be higher. We are going to be getting something for the money we're putting in. And like I said, I'm not against this project. Build it, I don't care. Pay a property tax, give us something.
Well, let's talk about that then. First of all, you're on the committee that's going to be looking at pilot for this. Do you have any choice other than yes or no, up or down,
I'll
for
vote.
what they can pay, what they have to pay?
I will vote against the pilot.
But do you get to negotiate? Do you get to say, no, this pilot offer is not acceptable?
Well, 4% of nothing is pretty much what it's going to be.
Right. So can the committee, could City Council say, let's do this at 8%? I mean, is there that latitude, or is it cut and dry, it's got to be 4%?
No, I don't think it does have to be 4%. And yes, maybe that is something we could look at, because $11,000 a year is not acceptable to me. It just isn't.
Well,
it's
would
not
you
going
have
to
an idea
provide
what
the
an
services.
acceptable figure would be?
Well, I'd like the $60,000 that they should be paying.
All right, Julie,
Well,
your thoughts on that?
my thoughts. Well, and I think there is a difference between nonprofit housing developers, or CHODOs like we are, and for-profit developers. I think
Which
there's-
is who's doing School for the Blind?
A
Is that
for-profit developer.
For-profit?
Yes, I think there's a difference because the work that we do is specifically answering the call of the city. The city says, we need you to do X, and we say, sure, we'll do it, and here's how we're going to do it together. So we work very closely. Not that the for-profits don't, but our charter is actually part of the city relationship. So when we're doing affordable housing, it's to answer a specific need. And so we get pilots because we're, we pay not a lot on our property where we have folks with severe mental illness. That property is, we only pay a couple $1,000s a year in taxes, and I guess at a 9-bedroom apartment, I think we probably could pay $5,000. We'd have to close the property.
Right.
It's the difference, because we make, I think last year I made $27 on the property total at the end of the year when although the auditors haven't been in yet, I'll probably lose money. But the truth is that if it is an absolute top priority for a city and they have a nonprofit developer, I think pilots are a great tool.
It's different.
It is different,
totally
but again,
different.
it's super, super high need, super complicated populations to work with. But I will also say this, I think that it's time for us to think about, widening the options in the pilot tool chest, if you will, for working with developers. I can tell you this right now, we've got a pilot on a property down in Mason. We have a senior living community, which is why I know so much about senior living communities. We have 61 apartments, about 75 souls live with us, and it's a great property. We are just now and now that we refined it and stuff, at the year 7 or 8, I think technically year 8 right now, we are just starting to really cash flow, and it's well managed, it's well operated, the residents are in great shape. We're just finally starting to see things in the black on a regular basis. And projecting forward, we'll be fine. We've paid off all the construction loans and all that other good stuff.
Julie,
So you could tier it.
Right. I also want to interject here that council in the past, I've been doing my research as chair of the Development and Planning. I'm really not sure that Lansing has a clear vision for housing in Lansing other than apartments and multi-dwelling. We're sorely lacking appropriate single-family dwellings. We have top-notch employees coming from all over the world to work in Niawave and the Frib, and you know what, they want world-class housing too, and they want a world-class school system. Can we provide any of that in the cities? At this point, I would say no.
Didn't we just build a whole bunch of new single-family housing over behind Lansing Catholic Central?
I live there. I absolutely live there, and our houses are selling for over $200,000. You know what? So there's a market for it, but we can't provide it. We aren't providing it. So all I'm going to say is, from here, we have a resolution on our books from after all of the Ferris developments on Pennsylvania that says we will only give pilots to senior housing, not mixed family senior, but senior housing, because it is going to be a severe need. And Julie and I absolutely, and we've had the discussion, we don't have the appropriate housing for these folks.
Right.
But I'm not talking just about senior housing. She's doing a lot of talking about senior housing. I'm not. I'm saying we need to look at these for-profit developers. Doggone it, I'm to the point, if you can't afford to do the project, let's get somebody who can.
So if City Council were to follow your lead and deny this to the developer,
pilot?
Is that likely to kill the school for the blind project?
He told me, well, I imagine that the pilot will pass through. My vote is only 1 of 8, and I have very specific reasons why I vote against it, because I am not against this project. I'm for the project. I just want the people that are going to profit over it to pay their fair share. I'm sick to death of us as taxpayers paying for their project and they get the
Do you
profit.
think it would kill the project?
Without a pilot on this one, yeah, I think so. But again, it's a strategic move. When you apply for tax credits, through
go.
low-income housing tax credits, you make choices. Are we going to serve certain populations? If so, we get more points.
Right.
Everything's
And
on
a
100
pilot gives them
Well,
more
what would
points.
you do, either of you know, what would it cost this developer if there were no pilot? What would they end up having to pay?
$50,000
the
a
Well,
city?
about
year.
50. I mean, they were going to
$50,000 a year.
negotiate,
About
and I
$50,000
don't know these for. Jody's been the one who's given. Yeah, it probably cost them about $50 a year. And I'll tell you, it'll hurt the first couple years as you're paying back your construction loans and all your upfront
And they're a
loans.
major developer out of
Yeah.
Indianapolis.
But
This
it's-
is not a poor developer. And I said, can you not afford to do this project? They said, we can absolutely do it. We want to do market rate, but this, we can only get financing for low to moderate income here because of the neighborhood.
I can give you about 20 seconds for the last
So-
word.
I would just say that I think that as we move forward, I think we need to work much more closely together at the city level and with all of the stakeholders. We've been
Yep.
trying hard, but you know what? When we have public hearings on housing and only 4 people show up and one of them's me, we need more people involved. We need more voices at the table because the city planning staff is only as good as the inputs
Right.
that the community gives them.
And everybody needs to be involved sooner. This was referred to committee Monday. We have to hear it
When
today.
is the hearing today?
Well, rezoning is today. It
All
will
right,
be
well,
a
and
process.
today is gone because this
Right.
show's on Saturday, and it'll be this same show will be back. We're going to rebroadcast it next Saturday if you missed any of it. I want to thank Julie Powers from the Greater Lansing Housing Coalition, Jody Washington from City Council, Todd Haywood from City Pulse. Thank you all for watching, and we'll be back with a new show in 2 weeks. Have a great weekend.